A fire.
Okay, we've got 34 people right now.
Okay.
I'm
right,
sure we're
thank
going
you.
to get into more of this. I'm turning on the recording, Marianne, and you can do the same.
Okay.
And we're going to go ahead and get started. And then these questions that you didn't get finished here, Ross, bring it up at the end and we'll talk further about it.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, this is great. First, I want to say that there's been a little delay here because of a old link that was sent out automatically rather than a new one. Marianne has somehow resolved that. And so we're now up to 36 people. We're just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for your patience. So with that, can you mute everybody, Marianne, except for Jen and Sarah and me, and I'll go ahead and start.
If I mute everybody, the ones you just said will have to unmute themselves. So here goes. Okay.
Okay, so once she mutes you,
Now Paul has been muted.
I'm just talking away. This is like normal, you know, I'm talking away at home and I've been muted by my wife and I don't even know the difference. And the only reason I knew is because Sarah was laughing at me.
Darn.
All right. All right, I think I got it now. So anyway.
Jen, you're
thank you.
muted.
I'm not now,
Oh, no, Jen is. I was just,
Jen.
I think there may be a fan going on. Sue.
got it.
Okay, so she's up. All right, so here we go. One last chat. Oh, somebody said hilarious. Ha ha ha. All right. So here we go.
What?
All right.
Yes.
All right.
I don't know. I checked.
Whoever's talking, let's be quiet now. Here we go. Da, 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 da. All right. Good evening and welcome to BoulderExo's presentation for July. I'm Paul Sperry and it's my pleasure to moderate tonight's speakers featuring an advanced life regression practitioner and a school teacher, both of whom are authors. They are connecting from 2 oceans and 6 time zones apart. Sarah Breskman Cosme in the Florida Keys and Jennifer Sullivan from Hawaii's Kona Coast. If you're wondering why we invited authors of books on Atlantis, it is because their initial quest was on memories of an extraterrestrial mission to Earth. There are many ways of accessing what lies yet untapped within our subconscious, including psychic readings and automatic writing. In this case, they used regression, where the subject is placed in a deeply relaxed state and is guided to retrieve memories they didn't know were there. But why would we trust what might be the imaginative ramblings of a person you do not even know? Well, those who know of the late Edgar Cayce recall that his 14,000 medical intuitive readings often spoke of conditions rooted in former lives, many in Atlantis. He actually didn't believe in reincarnation or Atlantis, but when the readings were studied for their historic facts, they revealed self-consistent patterns that were hard to deny. It seems those memories of issues from Atlantis are now resurfacing so that humanity can learn from this time and now make different choices. It is interesting that neither Sarah nor Jen are students of life beyond our planet, so their findings are untainted by a century of UFO reports. They also have almost no awareness of Cayce or that pattern, process. So the doors that he unexpectedly opened that have been closed since Plato's earliest account of Atlantis are now coming forth. Jan and Sarah are thus the perfect explorers with the necessary courage and absence of precondition and preconception to honestly see and report what they are seeing. Sarah Breskman Cosme began her unsuspected journey into the world of UFOs through her clients using past life regression hypnosis. Surprisingly, what was uncovered was a new understanding of UFO crashes, the seeding of planets, and the understanding of our true heritage and why we are now here. She became a master hypnotist in 2009, after which she trained with Dr. Brian Weiss to be a certified past life regressionist. From there, Sarah went on to train with Dolores Cannon's daughter, Julia, learning her specialized method called QHHT, or Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. Her traditional credentials include a degree from psychology from Northeastern University. In one of life's curious synchronicities, Sarah met Jennifer a decade ago with 3 children each at the same charter school. They knew each other for years, not knowing what the other did, until a hurricane brought them together. Jen initially traveled the world as a journalist, telling humanitarian stories of war, then became a middle school teacher of English, language arts, history, and social studies. She and her husband are scuba divers and once even ran an ice cream business. Jen's first lifetime that came through the regression was as a ship commander for the first seeding and hybridization of our planet. Atlantis and Lemuria began drifting in during subsequent sessions. Jen holds a master's degree in international journalism from City University of London, an MSc in development studies from SOAS University in London, and an international relations BA from Fordham. Sarah is becoming something of a celebrity and was recently interviewed on Gaia TV by Regina Meredith. Sarah and Jen have also been interviewed together, most recently yesterday on YouTube. Sarah's book is called A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis, and Jen's is titled Child of the Universe. They are based upon the same shared exploration, where Sarah's is largely a transcription in the order in which it was revealed, while Jen's has been assembled into a chronological life story. As in recent presentations, our guests will speak for around 20 minutes, stop briefly for questions and comments, then continue. Intermediate breaks will last just a few minutes, and we will save the longer discussions for the end. Their presentation should last around an hour, followed by Q&A for up to another hour, depending upon audience participation. To ask a question, click the raise hand button at any time, and I'll see it and call on you during the break. Depending upon your Zoom version and computer, that button is found under either the reactions or chat or participants options. If you need any technical assistance, send a chat directly to Marianne Sperry. This video is being recorded, so if you choose to remain anonymous, you can change your name or turn off your video. To quote their announcement, "We are an ancient grouping of beings who have come from different planets and have continuously moved from planet to planet in order to see the next and the next will be, to continuously evolve and spread throughout the universe so that we may never be alone. They say that we are more than a collection of individuals, but a connected collective of intertwined experiences and memories that shape the lives that we are now creating for ourselves. They are both passionate about learning and sharing as much as they can. So let me get out of their way. Imagine the silent Zoom applause and help BoulderExo board welcome Sarah Breskman Cosme and Jennifer Sullivan."
Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate, this is such an honor, honestly. I think anyone that creates any body of work just feels such an honor when they're asked to share it. And it's just so amazing that we can use the internet like this. You know, back in the ancient days, we'd all sit around a fire. I was, thinking about that. So this is amazing. And I'm so passionate about sharing this information because this information is so helpful to all of us. So thank you again for asking us to be here. And I think I'd just like to start a little bit telling you how I got into this journey and how basically how I, got to this point. Well, you did such a great job of telling people, a lot about me, but I started this journey just simply as a person that had a lot of problems. I mean, when I was really young, I was overweight and I had a lot of issues. I had OCD and phobias and fears. And so I went to traditional therapy to try to help these issues. And I was in traditional therapy for about 10 years. I don't feel like, I mean, it was helpful, but it really wasn't the cure that I was looking for. So even though I went to do that, I was looking for something that I knew would help other people. So I went to Northeastern University in the hopes to eventually become a psychologist. And when I got to college, something really amazing happened that changed my life. When I went back home to visit my family after a couple months of being in college, I realized that as I entered back into my family's house, I had forgotten to have all my problems. So I realized in that moment that by changing my environment, I changed my thoughts. And this was so mind blowing. I mean, I have not had any of these issues since because now I know that I can change my thoughts and how powerful that is. And I just never thought to do anything with that. And it's funny how that was my experience, but I didn't continue with going deeper into changing my thoughts as a career. So what happened was after graduating Northeastern, I had a job where I was basically, it was an internship where I was basically in charge of drugging my patients and counseling them. And it didn't take me very long to feel like everything I had learned was a lie. That's just how I felt because I learned so much about these methods and all this medication, and no one seemed to get any better. And no, there were no success stories there ever. And I thought, is this all there is for people? Really? Like, this is it? And I thought there must be something better, something else I could do to help people because I've always had this desire to help people. So I eventually became a hypnotist and I started doing quit smoking, lose weight, and past life regressions. And I realized right away that there was something about doing a past life regression that could heal somebody instantly. People would come in for all different issues. And the past life regressions worked amazingly well. So I decided I wanted to study with Dr. Brian Weiss and learn more about this. So I studied with him. I got, really good at his method, and then I wanted something more. And that is when I stumbled upon Dolores Cannon. And I learned her method. I rose up through the ranks, and then I became a level 3 practitioner, which is the highest level you can get. And then before the quarantine, I was traveling around the world with her daughter, assisting and teaching the classes. And that is how I got to where I am now, but it was through suffering. So anyway, Jen, I don't know if you want to tell them a little bit more about you.
Yes, actually, sorry. That was a little bit about us. About Sarah. Sorry, I probably should have put that slide on there. I have a bit of a varied background to where I was before I met Sarah. I actually never really intended on ending up in the Florida Keys. That was just something that kind of ended up happening for me. I started off my life in New York City and I grew up there. And my biggest goal that I always felt driven towards as a young child was telling the truthful story to people of things that were happening, uncovering these misunderstandings and trying to explain to people better what was really going on behind the scenes. So naturally, this led into a career of journalism. I worked in my high school on our newspaper there. I worked in our college newspaper. I eventually graduated college. I went and I worked in the media for a little bit, and it was very disappointing, to be honest. I found that everything I was being told to do was lies. I had to cover things up. I had to make up things. I had to not cover stories that were related to the people who owned the companies that I was working for. And it became a very difficult thing to do. I ended up going back to school and getting 2 master's degrees, one in development studies, and then another one in, actually, I'll just switch it over so you can read that. Another one in international journalism. And I, from there, went on and I tried working in the Middle East and in Europe. I found the most difficult time I ever had as a journalist was working in the Middle East. I couldn't even tell people the truth of what the temperature was outside there. So after a while of working and trying to uncover the humanitarian side of war, conflict, of disease and destruction for people, I ended up going back to New York City and working for a news agency that pretty much laid off the entire staff a couple of months later. Through this, I received a phone call from one of my parents saying, listen, why don't you come down to the Florida Keys with us for a little bit? We have a house down there. Take some time off and then come back up to New York and just hit it again real hard and find your way again. And I actually never went back to New York. I ended up staying in the Florida Keys. Life had planned something for me there. And I ended up marrying someone who had 2 children, and I ended up raising them. And that was how I met Sarah. So I really did not plan on having this kind of a life. I intended on living in trenches and covering people's stories and giving them a voice, but life had different, it had a different plan for me. So I ended up in Florida with children, and suddenly I ran into a woman who was very friendly and had children of the same age. Through that, we ended up a decade later finally understanding that she's a hypnotist and I had a health condition. And the two things combined, and this is kind of where we are now from all of it. We've really uncovered some amazing stuff, things I wasn't at all aware of. I was never very interested in alien concepts. I was never interested in things of the supernatural or anything outside of just basic head-on journalism. So for me, a lot of the concepts I came across in QHHT or past life regression are very foreign to me. Also, the world of aliens, alien abductions, this is all very new to me. Also, if when you're asking questions about things that may relate to it, I may not actually know what those things are just because I don't have a lot of background knowledge in this kind of stuff. So that's kind of a little bit of my story. And I'll bring
So there
Sarah
are
back.
2 books, and they're very different. So one just tells the story of uncovering past lives from many clients, and the other one is a firsthand perspective. Mine is A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis, and Jen's is Child of the Universe.
Yes. Excellent. And the firsthand perspective that it follows in my book is that of one of the leaders of Lemuria who experiences the downfall of Lemuria and then is abducted and taken to Atlantis and experiences the downfall of that civilization towards the end of her life.
One of the reasons why Jen is one of the best subjects for this is because she didn't know anything about Dolores Cannon, or I was even scared to ask her if she wanted to do a past life regression. She didn't know. I even asked her if she believed in extraterrestrials, and she said she wasn't sure. So that is another reason why I could trust, and it helped to validate this information for me. Just to give you a background of what Jen was like before we started doing this. She was a school teacher. I mean, you could probably tell just from listening to her talk, she's very intellectual. She's just wasn't a person I ever shared anything about spirituality with. In fact, I was a little nervous. I never broached the subject at all, ever, about what she believed, because I just didn't think she would believe in that stuff. She just didn't come across to me as someone that believed the same things that I did. But anyway, what is QHHT? QHHT, or quantum healing hypnosis technique, is the method that I use for the most part when I uncovered this information. In earlier sessions, I used Dr. Brian Weiss's method. But basically what QHHT method is the method that Dolores Cannon invented after 45 years of research. And this method is amazing because what it does is it really allows a person to go inwards and find out information about themselves. People have a hard time seeing what's below the surface within themselves, and QHHT can help a person do that. They can find out who they really are, they can find out their true purpose, and they can even heal their body. There are so many things you can do with a QHHT session. I even had a client come because she was curious about how her uncle was murdered, and she was able to find out the last names of the people that did it. She actually found out it was an accident, and she was able to find out the last name of a witness, in fact. So you can use this method for so many different things. it's really incredible when you want to do research, especially right now. When Dolores Cannon was doing her work, and even when I first started in 2009, this information was kept hidden, if that makes sense. So the information was not as readily available, and it felt to many clients as if they would be unconscious. So let me explain it like this. This was how it used to be. This would be the conscious mind that we're all using right now, or at least I think we are. And this would be the subconscious, or like the higher self. And to get to the higher self, it would feel like a person would go so deep that they would feel unconscious. And a lot of the reasons for that was because this information was so unacceptable, and it would create too much change in a person that they couldn't be that awake and aware. Well, now, since our human brains have evolved and this information is available, we can go further into this information than we ever could before. So this is a really exciting time to be alive. And in that as well, we are almost becoming our higher selves. So nowadays I see clients like they feel so awake and aware in their sessions while being in very deep states of hypnosis. It's an incredible time to do this method. So Dolores Cannon, you can switch to the other page. I'll just tell you more about her. Oh, let me play this. This is an example of a QHHT session. I'll just play about a minute of it to give you an example.
What's real? Can you tell me about them? Are they in the ocean? The ocean that we go in? A deep ocean. Oh, what do they look like? They aren't as good depicted. They are more fish-like. Oh, than human. So are they part human? They have humanoid characteristics, but they're more or less an alien entity. Oh, tell me more about that. Well, they were placed there. Why? When the world was created, Earth was created, just as another species. Oh. What that integrated into the ocean.
Sarah, we're not able to hear this well
Yeah.
enough to, could you just summarize a couple of the
Sure.
exchange so that we can all hear it better?
Sure. Well, basically, this is an example of what you can find out in a QHHT session. In fact, you can find out anything. And in that session, she was asking whether or not mermaids were real. And I used a little bit of that in my book. She just is going into just that they are, which is quite shocking for her consciously. But it was really interesting that they were from a seed. What she received, her higher self received, was that they were from a seeding when the extraterrestrials were coming here to Earth and seeding different places all over the world to see what would do the best on this Earth. And mermaids were from that, and they didn't do quite as well as humans, basically because they would hide away more than humans were, so they didn't evolve and weren't as much a part of the hybridization process. But Dolores Cannon, just to give you a little bit more information about her, she was very famous for her paranormal investigation and her work when it comes to UFOs, and she was a past life regressionist who specialized in the recataloging of lost knowledge. The key concepts from Dolores Cannon's website were the subconscious retains knowledge from prior existences that can be accessed and acquired with reliable results. Many people look up the people that they were before, and they can find information about these people. So there are many reliable results that have come from Dolores Cannon's method. And she wrote many books, including The Custodians and The 3 Waves of Volunteers and The New Earth, which are very interesting. One thing that she stumbled upon was that many people have been contacted by extraterrestrials, and that the contacts between families and extraterrestrial races have been multi-generational. abductees are taken by mutual agreement, and millions on Earth are being contacted by them as well. And Jen has a lot of experience with that. When I asked her if she believed in extraterrestrials, I was able to regress her to see if she had been abducted. And I don't know if you want to talk about that experience.
Definitely. I think we have a little bit of a slide coming up where we're going to talk about current life, what we kind of linked up to. And I can definitely get more into why I felt so scared of any kind of alien concepts, any kind of UFO concepts growing up. I was actually terrified of it. I wouldn't watch movies that had to do with it, read books with it. It was a very scary thing for me until Sarah hypnotized me and I found out why. I was a little bit scared, but it wasn't what I thought it was. It was something very different.
Because many clients are scared when they first realize they've been abducted, or it's often the case that many clients come because they've grown up with this life of being abducted, and they have no one to talk to about it, and they wonder if they're crazy. So they want to know, have they really been abducted, or are they crazy, or what is happening to them? Because a lot of them feel like society won't accept them if they have been. So they come for a session and realize that yes, they're not crazy, that yes, this has been happening to them as well as happening to their whole families, and that it's beneficial. For most of the time, they are them. A lot of times, as an instance, just recently, I had a client who was visited by a gray being who wanted to do different work on him, and it was because he is that gray being in the future, and the gray being did not want him to go down this road because he will eventually turn out like him. So he's coming here to help him with this. So it's very interesting how it's so common these days. I see it a lot. But anyway, do you guys have any questions for us?
Jen, would you like to turn off your sharing right now, and then I'll look at the pictures of everybody here? Look at the pictures of everybody here. And let me see if I can do this. All right, I'm looking at everybody now. Are there any questions? I'm looking to see if I see any hands up. And I am not. So I will ask a question, being prepared as I am. Is the presented wisdom coming from your Akashic records, your DNA, your guides, or something else?
Oh, this is such a great question. Do you mean the wisdom that comes through during the session?
Right, where's it coming from? And that's the first thing you need to know before you start to decide whether you're going to accept it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that question. When I ask the subconscious what to call it, it just says you can call it whatever you want. Dolores asked it as well. Where is this information coming from? And it always says it's coming from them. So basically it's you on some level. So I don't know if it really matters what you call it, where it comes from.
Yeah, I think on every level of it, it's you. Truly, from the multitude of sessions I've had and what it finally came back to after almost 3 years of doing sessions with Sarah, you can call it anything you want, but what you are and what you trace your source energy back to even before your birth is connected into every single aspect of what you've just mentioned. So you can be pulling from all of it, but at the end of the day, it's really you. You are the most powerful thing to be pulling from.
Exactly. And each person creates their own reality. So it's almost like we each have a bubble of reality. So there is no like, my truth might not be Jen's truth. So where I pull my information from might not be where you pull it from, but like Jen said, it would be from you because we are all God in a sense.
The difficulty I have with that answer is that if somebody says, well, I just know there was no Atlantis and I am remembering something from Atlantis, you're going to say, well, we're both right. And
No.
then we don't, I mean, how do you
Oh,
know
no,
in
of
the
course.
time of misinformation, how do you know what to trust and how do you corroborate something that is so difficult to corroborate?
That's a really great question. And I really honestly believe that it would be true for them because we all create our own reality. So it might not be true for a person. Atlantis might not have happened. Just like I've had many clients say that for some people, the Holocaust never happened.
Yeah, some people might need to experience that denial as an experience in this lifetime in order to overcome something from a previous lifetime. So rather than trying to get everyone to agree on everything, it's more important to focus on the individual and what their sense of need and accomplishment is at that time. And I think just moving forward as an evolved society, I think we need to pull away from that method entirely. We don't need agreement. We don't need consensus. It causes a lot of problems.
We've got two hands up and in the order they came in. Ross, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. So speaking of this, future selves and parallel selves, is there any evidence and correlation that this is really happening on more, I guess, on mainstream, not just kind of here and there?
So what do you mean about what do you mean by that exactly? What happening?
So in other words, there could be one of me, which is really a future, my future self exists on this same timeline, right here, right now, without us knowing about each other, but we are still incarnated in this reality, or maybe coming from a parallel reality as a fragment.
That's possible because I have heard in sessions that everything is like a hologram. So we're projecting our focus onto something. So a part of us isn't even here. And a part of us is somewhere else as well. Part of us is living a totally different life. There is no, time isn't linear.
No.
And that was so hard for me to understand because I thought everything stacked up like this. But what I've been told is that things also go like this. So everything can happen all at once. The rings around us.
That's it. It's that's what you just mentioned. Yeah. So I was wondering if there's more evidence of that, people coming through or remembering that.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's difficult because this is not scientific evidence, but yet wouldn't it be scientific evidence if so many people shared the same information without knowing one another? Isn't many people's experiences that add up to be the same scientific evidence?
Well, you cannot, so people's experiences are I think so real. So I would say heck with the science. It's what we know, what we feel, what we experience. It's sometimes that cannot be explained from our concepts of what we know as a science is currently.
Exactly.
Careful, you're treading on my toes.
Oh, sorry, Paul. I guess so. Sorry, you toes.
Okay, can we move to Meg and make that the last question for now? And Brad, I'll catch you on the next break. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Meg.
Hi there. Jen, my question's for you. I just wanted to know a little bit more about your experience in your regressions and what kind of things came up for you that you were not expecting.
Actually, all of it. I really wasn't sure what I was going into, to be honest. I had tried in the past, probably about a year before we had tried doing QHHT. Sarah, I had asked her if she could help me lose weight. She had seen me lose a lot of weight at one point, and then I had a baby and gained it all back. And I said, please, can you just, give me a little hint here? So we tried it out, and I was just fighting with myself on it. I really could not get the success that I wanted. And that was the most experience I had really had into hypnosis. I didn't understand understand that it could go further, that it could heal like levels of my mind and whatnot. I just didn't know enough about it. So when I started with Sarah doing the QHHT session, I had no idea what to expect. So much was just blew my mind. The most interesting thing I really like came across was that when I was in the sessions with her, I was saying these things and I wasn't seeing these things. It was almost like a download of information was coming through to me, and I was able to interpret it, and I could kind of visualize it, but it wasn't like a movie that was playing in front of my mind. And I could see why they wanted me to receive it that way, because I wasn't ready to have this all-encompassing, like walking onto a movie set experience. I wouldn't have believed it, because I've been very skeptical about things like this in the past. I always prided myself in being very facts-based as a journalist. And when I had that first session, it blew my mind. It truly did. Well, actually, it did the opposite of blowing my mind. It shrunk the water around my brain and helped to heal me. So I could actually talk to you all day about the things that I experienced in it, and I would love to. I'm going to tell you a little bit more later in this the presentation too about the specifics. Was there anything specific that you were interested in beyond that, or?
I think if I'll wait until you present more, but yeah, thank you.
Feel free to contact me after this as well if there was something I didn't go into that you were more interested in.
Thank you.
Okay, it's time to go ahead then and proceed. If Jen, you'd like to go ahead and start sharing your screen again and pick up where you left off.
Got it. I'm going to actually hand this over to Sarah, because this is a quote from her book, and it's going to start getting into the whole connection between UFOs and Atlantis.
So this is a quote from my book. The information about Atlantis and Lemuria has been buried for thousands and thousands of years because the information is so powerful that it would create change amongst the people. And that is from the higher self. And the reason why this would create so much change is, a lot of it is because the truth about Atlantis and Lemuria are that they originated from UFO crashes. That is something that Jen and I learned as we were doing our regressions. That is why Atlantis had so much technology, because the originator of Atlantis was part of the crash landing, and he took the technology and started his own colony on what would be called Atlantis. And he used humans basically as slaves. And that is the truth of where Atlantis came from. And then as well with Lemuria, there's a whole story that goes with that there. But also, if people really learned the truth about this information needs to come out now, because people need to understand who they really are and why they're here, and really understand that they're not this imagined product of society that they've been told they are. That really, people have such a deep reason for being here. They have deep origins, and people are so powerful. So this information is so important to go to the people now, because we're about to create such a massive shift as everybody starts to release this trauma from these lifetimes. So when right after the civilizations were destroyed, because there was so much trauma and so much karma to account for, so many of us got together thousands and thousands of years later and decided we would come back again now to finally release this trauma. I mean, the time is ripe. It's ripe for this. Even when people like Jen tried to share this information back in the 70s, they were called crazy. So we are finally at a point now where we can actually share this information and actually learn from it. So this is a really powerful time. So what is the Atlantis UFO connection? And it all began with our session. So like we said before, neither one of us knew much about Atlantis or Lemuria. I was under the gun. I needed a subject to be recorded so that I could go get my level 3 QHHT level. And so I just asked Jen. I was really nervous to ask her, and I still don't know why I asked her. it was just a thought popped into my mind that I needed to do this. So I asked Jen if she would do a session with me, but you know, as you know, I don't even think she was into spirituality or anything like that. She told me that she was interested in Abraham Hicks. So I thought, oh my gosh, okay, maybe I will, you know, ask her about this. But when I asked her if she would do this session with me, I was so surprised because she said yes. And I thought, I'm going to have to convince her to do this with me, or I'm going to have to find a different subject to do this. And I didn't want a paying client because I knew that my whole class would watch this video. And so I told her, would you do this? You know, there's only 3 people in this advanced class, but would you be my subject? And she said yes, because she hadn't told anybody, but she had this brain condition called pseudotumor cerebri. So I don't know, Jen, if you want to talk a little bit about your condition.
Yeah, sure. I had no issues like this ever in my life before growing up. I had no issues with anything with my brain, anything neurological. I always had a very healthy, you know, no major medical issues kind of situation going on.
Jen, can you turn on your video?
I'm going to have to come out of the presentation. I think when I go into it, it automatically closes it.
It should work. It should work.
All right, let's see. Stop share.
Helps us to feel a connection with you.
Is that working now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. It sometimes just pulls me out when I press present on this presentation. There we go.
Nice job.
So we're going to talk a little bit real quickly about what kind of led to my illness. This was something that happened after in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma. I don't know if many of you are familiar with Hurricane Irma, but it happened in 2017 in September. We had a couple of days notice that a hurricane was coming towards our home in the Florida Keys. We both lived on the same island, Sarah and I. And we all pretty much scurried to cover up as much as we could of our homes and get as far away from Florida as we could. So I had 3 children at the time, so did Sarah. We all pretty much packed our stuff up and left. And when we came back, our entire community was just devastated. We had been slammed head on by a Category 4 storm. We had almost 14 feet of water go through my neighborhood at the same time. So even though all of our houses are raised up about 10 feet off the ground in the Florida Keys for reasons like this, we still had all our homes destroyed. And the schools were destroyed, everything was. So for quite a while, a lot of us really just lived in a state of survival. We had no choice but to kind of live in these hovels of houses we once had, or if we were lucky enough, we were able to get a FEMA trailer. We had about 10 FEMA trailers were sent to the entire Florida Keys during that time as well. So we were kind of abandoned by our local government, our federal government, our state government. And then the rest of us basically had to deal with life at this point, now that everything was destroyed, our business is gone. It didn't take long for me to start having an issue with my eye after this. I believe the onset of the stress of it or whatever it was, it triggered something to the point where one morning I woke up and I couldn't see I couldn't see out of my right eye, most of it anyway. It was this bright burning crescent shape that I kept seeing every time I tried to see out of it. So I went to an eye doctor. They rushed me to the hospital. They basically said they thought I was having some kind of brain, issue. I may be bleeding into my brain. They needed to do a lot of stuff. And as a result, they put me on a ton of medication, more medication than I've ever wanted to ever take in my entire life. The medication made me sicker. It didn't help. It caused extra problems with my kidneys. And I was just at a point where I was afraid I was going to die and leave 3 small children with another devastated parent and a hovel of a life that we once had. I was terrified. I really was. I had no options at that point, or at least I thought I had no options, until one day my friend called me and said, "Hey, you want to try something new?" And it changed everything for me. So that was pretty much the onset of the illness that we were dealing with. It coincided with Sarah needing to get her level 3, and we both pretty much met at this center point.
The reason why QHHT works so well when it comes to illnesses or any kind of issues is because the body is a messenger. So once the message or the is understood, it can instantly be released and healed. Many people come for a QHHT session because they have some illness or cancer or something like that. And literally, it's unfortunate that we're not taught this, that our bodies are just messengers, that we really just need to listen quietly to what our body's saying. And it's not there to harm us, it's there to help us. For instance, I had a client with a shoulder injury, a right shoulder injury. And when I regressed her and asked to speak with her subconscious, her subconscious said that they gave her the shoulder injury. They literally gave it to her. So I said, why would you give her a shoulder injury? And they said, because she's going down the wrong road. She just started this cleaning career and she's using this right shoulder. So we're going to stop that by giving her this shoulder injury so she can't clean with that shoulder. And so I said, well, what do you want her to do? And they said, she is supposed to be a singer. Her whole purpose in this life is to be a singer. Her voice will heal people. We do not want her to go down this wrong road. She asked us if she gets off the path to put her back on this path by sending her a sign. And this is her sign. So I said, well, does she need this anymore? She got the sign. And they said, no, only if she stays on this path and becomes a singer. But if she doesn't, we're going to give it right back to her. So, they healed it and everything. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I can't even believe it. This is amazing what QHHT can do. Well, I saw her at the store down the street about a couple months later, and she was in a sling. And I said, what happened? What happened? And she said, oh, well, I was worried about starting this singing career. So I went back to cleaning and now my left shoulder is hurting. And I said, listen to your session, because don't forget, your subconscious said to be a singer. So that's just to give you a background of how easy it is to heal yourself, that the body is simply just a messenger. And once you understand it, it doesn't need to be a scary thing. So many of us, when we're diagnosed with something, we feel so much fear. But really, if you can think about your body as trying to help you and look at it from that perspective, it doesn't have to be a scary thing. But this is how we began all this information, because we were aiming to cure this. And what we uncovered was a new understanding of UFO crashes, the seeding of planets, and who we really are and why we're here. And what's really interesting is our first session. In our first session, we learned a lot about Atlantis, and neither one of us, like I said, knew that much about Atlantis. I didn't even know what she was really talking about when she was going to this really highly advanced civilization where there were cars hovering and they use this special technology and this propulsion method. I didn't really understand until deeper into our session. But in our first session, we learned that Jen had uncovered this lifetime where she was basically a female ruler in Lemuria, and she was groomed to be the ultimate ruler, and she was only the ruler for a little while until she was taken by the Atlanteans and forced to be a prisoner for about 60 years. And what we also learned from our sessions was that Jen had tried to share this information back in the 70s, and she had tried and people called her crazy, and she was lobotomized and eventually killed herself. And we learned that she came back again to do this again in this lifetime. But the truth about Atlantis really is that it was a society that was based primarily on technology, and they went very far down the road of technology, but they did not balance that with compassion. And I don't know, Jen, if you want to say more about Atlantis.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing that I realized in this is I had never really read anything up on Atlantis growing up other than just the basic things you'd see in like a Disney movie. I had no real interest in it. What came forth in my sessions about this place was a very negative experience that I had there in Atlantis, that anything that I had ever come across just in school or whatever that would have mentioned it always painted it as this positive place of progression, of technology, of advancement, of true evolvement of society that was taken away suddenly by some natural disaster. And what I received in these sessions was a completely different perspective of a society that was about to collapse on themselves, a society that had truly forgotten about the humanity of their people, and a society that was more than willing to use their people at any cost to benefit the advancement of a few. And I know there's a lot of parallels you'd see to today, but I think there's no coincidence that you're seeing parallels to today's society. When I was recounting this in my regressions, I think history often repeats itself until we're willing to learn from it. And that's kind of where the perspective of Atlantis changed for me, to a very negative one instead of a place of fantasy and, I don't know, enlightenment. So we could talk a little bit more. I think Sarah can lead you in a little bit more about what we learned in our QHHT sessions.
Sure. Well, what we learned was that past lives can affect our present day lives. And they, for instance, many clients will have issues maybe with rashes or different issues that are residue from a past life. And past life regression can give us firsthand perspective on our forgotten history. And there is a pattern of global amnesia, ancestral karma that many of us are back here again now to finally complete. What we learned in our QHHT sessions are that many humans are a remnant of an ancient hybridization program engineered by visitors from another planet. And you can see this physical evidence by the shape of our jaws and by people that have blue eyes. That is not from evolution through the human species. So we started with this. Originally, we wanted to start from the beginning of Jen's lifetime in Lemuria. So we decided, because this information was so important for the world and to share this information was so important, that we were going to start from the beginning of that lifetime that she had. I thought we were going to start from when she was a child growing up in Lemuria. And I was shocked when we didn't start from that point. I asked to start from the beginning, and what happened was we started from the beginning, from the information they wanted to share with us, which was the seeding of the planet Earth and coming from the Pleiades. And Jen recalled a lifetime where her mission was to interbreed with humans, and they were seeds planted and left to evolve to create colonies of hybrid children for mutual benefit and survival. So it was we also uncovered a very different version of the biblical creation myth in our sessions. And what's fascinating is that I had so many other clients recount very similar stories. But Jen, I don't know if you want to talk at all about your experience with this.
Definitely. This was one of the first things that came across in our first session. I remember that one of the first things I saw once I came off the cloud, as they call it in the QHHT method, once I had been relaxed enough for Sarah to start regressing me, the first thing I saw were giant ferns. And I had this amazing feel, like this overwhelming feeling of anxiety. I was searching for someone. I knew I was searching for a woman, and I didn't know where she had gone and what she had done, but I knew she took our baby with her, or the child she was pregnant with. And I had no idea where this stuff was coming from. When I re-listened to my session, I was like, where is this even coming out of? I don't know, like out of left field kind of material for me. But as we listened over and over again to these sessions, everything started to come together like a massive puzzle, this 50,000 piece puzzle, pretty much, that what it's seeming to be like. The first one, as the commander, that was my first life we recounted. The commander came to Earth on a mission from the Pleiades, and he was in charge of this group of beings who were taking on these human forms, coming to Earth, and they were going to start one of the next phases of the hybridization program. Already before the commander had come to Earth, in our sessions, I have recounted that there was a civilization on Antarctica. There was also a civilization in Lemuria and Atlantis that predates my arrival to Atlantis. It was a very old experiment on Atlantis that kind of went a little haywire and was abandoned by our ancient ancestors that had come from the stars. So there's a little bit of a backstory that goes into it, but the purpose of it was for the commander to come and to help scientifically, in vitro fertilization wise, create these new children that would help benefit everyone, mutual survival for both species, for both, I don't even want to call it species, but for both products. The commander was a really interesting past life to deal with, because it's very strange when you take on these regressions and you go into them, you really do take on their mentalities, almost their physical, like facial aspects. Like you can feel your face almost changing and molding into that person and who they were. And you can feel them kind of speaking through you and talking to you, but it's coming from a place of, I don't even know what I want to call it, but kind of like I would say like your DNA holds a lot of this stuff, is what I've also seen. So that was the first life, the commander coming here. Should I go a little bit more? Sarah, do you think I should tell a little bit more about the commander, or should we move on?
Yeah, sure.
So the commander, we found out, was sent here to do this. Everything went wrong. The first thing that happened was our ship crashed. Our ship crashed, and I recall it crashing into the water and embedding itself into rock. I kept getting the image that it was called Salt Lake, or a salt lake was the big thing that was coming across in our sessions, is where that is. And from there, we basically trekked for quite a while trying to find humans. We were sent into one specific region where they knew there were humans that were sprinkled there generations and generations ago, and we were sent to go work with them. And they were waiting for us as well. It was kind of a very interesting matchup. The commander comes across a woman whose name is Evie, and she introduces them to her clan. They basically work back and forth together with the clan. They learn their ways, how to survive. They're taught in exchange. They teach the clan how to do different things with technology. It's a mutually beneficial agreement, but things kind of go a little bit crazy. One of our, I don't know what you call him, a crewmate, his name was Atlas, and he kind of snapped after we crash landed on Earth. And instead of working together as a team, he decided to go off and do his own thing. And he decided to use our technology to start creating his own population of people that he wanted in his own image. And since that wasn't our mission, it kind of created an issue between the two of us. And at the end of the day, the woman who was carrying the one hybrid child that was a success, the woman Evie, who agreed to do it, ended up having to leave in order for her to not be destroyed by our crew member Atlas, who was basically took the technology, left, and went to another island, which later became Atlantis. So there's a lot that goes on with the commander. He tells a very colorful story of what happened before. It's a very almost heart-wrenching thing when I think about what he had to go through. He ends up dying alone and not knowing what happened to the hybrid child, and only is able to see in his afterlife the success that it was. This hybrid child is taken to a place that is now known as Lemuria, and she is the first successful hybrid child that will create a very long line of female rulers in what will be called Lemuria one day. Well, Amun is the continent, but Lemuria was the capital city.
So all along, Jen was planning on writing a book. I never had the intention to write a book at all. And I just wanted to help her pull this information as well as help her heal. And then what started to happen was all of a sudden, I started having so many clients come and recount the same time period of Atlantis and Lemuria, or as an extraterrestrial crash landing, or as an extraterrestrial in Antarctica, or all different things. And it was so divinely planned that way. I can see now that they would come to reassure me, to say, okay, this is correct. And it was really fascinating how they would describe themselves and they would look the same without ever knowing anything about ETs, the way they dressed or the symbol or anything like that, or about Antarctica. Many of my clients were just coming for a basic QHHT session with no knowledge of this. So that really helped me validate this information, because it was such a powerful story. And I learned, because so many people were coming with this information, that I also needed to share other people's perspectives as well, because this information is so important. And I feel like it's important for it to be validated. So our second past life was of Kala of Lemuria, or Amun as they called it. And they had a deep connection to alien technology as a remnant of the hybrid program.
Jen, we've been going quite a ways here. Would this be a good place to have a quick break and then start off with past life number 2?
Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Okay, so Jen, if you would like to shut off the presentation sharing, I'll go ahead and open it up to everybody. And I think that the first person that wanted to speak was Brad. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, hello, this is for Sarah. Back in the first session, you talked about your higher self. Could you explain what you mean by that and what that is and how do we connect with that? What does it take to connect with that? Because I've heard of that, but I don't know, it's still a head scratcher for me. Thank you.
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. Our higher self is basically the part of us that never incarnates. So each of us are physically focused in this reality, but there is a part of us that is still part of the all, part of one, it is God, actually. I guess that's the best way to put it. So you're speaking with that part, and that's why it's all knowing, all loving, and you can heal yourself because you're bypassing the ego. One way that you can connect with that part really easily, there's a couple ways. One way is right when you wake up in the morning and you still have access to your dream, to just stay in that state, and you really just don't wake up all the way. Just stay in that state and see what kind of information comes to you. A lot of times there's lots of love, or your body, you can feel your body being worked on in that state. So but don't wake up all the way. When you still have access to your dream, just stay there. Another way that you can connect with your higher self is actually through ancient symbols. One symbol that was used in Lemuria is the flower of life pattern. By staring at that, by meditating, you can ask a question and actually receive the answer. That's one quick way to do it. Or just ask yourself a question and trust the very first thought that comes to your mind. The very first thought is the higher self. I hope I answered your question.
Just to follow up, yes, that certainly does. I did not realize that all of us, not all the soul reincarnates. So that's an interesting point. But by meditating and reaching that state of samatha, can we also address the higher self?
Of course. And right now is the best time for that, because like I said, we're just becoming our higher selves. You can do this so easily, either staying in that state when you wake up in the morning, or literally just asking yourself a question and just listen. What I mean by listening is, like, if you were to imagine the sound of the ocean, that feeling of hearing that in that way. So listen as if you were to imagine the sound of the ocean, but you're imagining a voice. So listen for the first thought or the first voice that you hear, if that makes sense. It's very easy to access the higher self.
Well, you say so, but for males, that's very difficult to build our intuition. So that's a challenge for us, but some of us are working on it.
Well, try the flower of life pattern. It's amazing. It's put there for our benefit. It's put there for us so we can communicate using that tool. In Lemuria, it was like a key that went into a lock. It's encoded. A lot of those, I mean, I'm sure all of those sacred symbols, even crop circles, are coded to do that. So by staring at something like the flower of life, you're opening something in the brain. You're growing the brain. It's incredibly healthy to stare at something like that. So just stare at it and focus in on it. Ask a question if you want and just see what happens.
Interesting that you raised the crop circle, looking at a crop circle, because there's a few that I found resonate with me deeply. So very interesting point as well.
Go with that. Go with that feeling.
Thank you.
Hey, Angie, you like to unmute?
All right, there we go. All right. Hello, Jen. Hello, Sarah. So I do a lot of out-of-body travel, and I really go back to those times and often take groups of people with me and whatnot. So I have a lot of information on Lemuria and Atlantis as well, and actually bring that forward and make technology out of some of that. But my question is actually around a project that Corey Brown did from the Farsight Institute. And they were jumping back to the end of Atlantis to figure out how it ended. In my tradition, you know, we have a story, but it's kind of mysterious. It had to do with the dark crystal. He got a lot more information out of it though. And he has it as they were deep drilling down in below the Earth's mantle. And there's a pressure inside, and it upwelled magma, which basically, you know, ended up not covering the Earth, but causing complete chaos and the end of humanity once again. And I am really curious if you and Jen ran into any of the details of the end of Atlantis.
I'm so glad that you brought this up, because Atlantis spanned for so many thousands of years, and there were other destructions, just like what you said. Right, Jen? Wasn't that something it was similar to that? I don't know if it was drilling, but we did uncover something like that. I don't remember the specifics.
Atlantis had a very long history, and it's a very tainted history. There were many instances over its like almost 50,000 year span that saw conquest, disaster, technology destroying people. But one of the things I noticed though when we were doing the stuff on Atlantis was, and this is actually something Paul asked me yesterday. He said, "Do you really think you blew up Atlantis?" I said, "Well, maybe I did, but I don't think it was just me. I think that there was a combination of things so perfectly tuned and timed together that it all allowed it to work. And so I was not the only instrument in that. There were so many multiple areas that all worked together in many different ways, caused it all to kind of happen the way it did." And I'm not sure if you're familiar with with how we painted it in the end of our books or not, but we kind of show it as a manipulation of energy that they were pulling from people who were mutated from a vaccine that happened in Atlantis.
Okay. Yeah, what I've seen it was manipulation of a dark crystal, which destroyed Earth energy grids and the crystalline structure above us in the stratosphere and whatnot.
Yep, that actually fits right into it, actually.
Does it? Okay, yeah, that's what I've seen. But I was interested in this deep drilling project that brought up a bunch of magma and completely disrupted the climate. And yeah, 80,000 years. So there was plenty of time for us to mess up things in a lot of different ways.
So many different ways, and it had so many different levels of it, but the final one that really blew it off the map, you've nailed it with the crystal. We talk about it in the book, and we really go into a bit of detail as to how it was used and misused.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I look forward to, I'll have to read that, because that's the parts I've seen, is the dark crystal.
It is.
Thank you.
I have questions, Angie, about that too, but it's going to be a longer answer, I think. So I'm going to wait until the end. Anyway, Cynthia will be the last question for now, if you unmute.
Hey there. Thank you so much, Sarah and Jen. It's great to have you here.
Hello.
So, a couple questions. So, Lemuria versus Atlantis. I know that a lot of people have dreams about the wave. I've met a lot of people. I've had those dreams too. And just wondering what kind of dreams people that have been in Atlantis have had. And then, so you were talking about we're here to heal traumas from that time. So what exactly is the trauma from, Lemuria versus Atlantis? And how is it expressed? And what particular mission are people on from those two different places in this time period?
What a great question. Well, I know me personally, I have a lot of memories from Atlantis. And so what's going on right now is a huge trigger for me. This reminds me of my time in Atlantis, where basically we're going through the same things. And just like back in Atlantis, I know a lot, but I try not to make any waves. I'm careful who I share it with. Also, everything with the vaccine is a big trigger for a lot of us. And with technology, with all this new technology, all of this at my core somewhat frightens me a little bit. I do have dreams about that. So
about the virus.
About the virus,
vaccine.
yeah, about the vaccine. So yeah, what's really interesting, I'll go into a little bit, was that was my job in Atlantis, was to decide who would stay and who would go. I didn't know that the people that were affected by the parents that took this vaccine, I didn't know that they were killed. And it's kind of hard to talk about, but it was just, it's when I see everything happening around us right now, it's such a huge trigger, because it's like, I know that we're choosing differently, and I know that humans evolve in cycles, and so that we must be doing better if we're hitting this evolutionary point, because that's the way human evolution works. So we must be doing better, which comforts me, and I've heard from higher selves that we are doing better. But I would say that is one big trigger for people that are from the end times of Atlantis, and also not keeping our knowledge, because I think a lot of Atlanteans wish they could have kept that knowledge that they had during that time, and it was, so much of it was lost.
In the book, you talked about two different things in regard to the virus, and one was that it was meant to trigger memories like what you're describing, but then another thing that you guys talked about was that the virus was actually, the vaccine and or the virus was actually a good thing. It was gonna help like shift evolution or something like that.
Well, I think it's really interesting because there is no right or wrong. So the side effects of the vaccine turned many children into having these hybrid, they had different animal body parts. And at first they were killed, but then eventually they were tested. And what they realized was so many of these children had abilities. So if you look at what's happening right now with these savants, different side effects lead to different abilities. So there is nothing is ever really bad. It may look bad in the beginning, like what we're going through right now may look bad in the beginning, but it's going to lead to something great. Everything does. Everything always does.
Okay. So did you get a clear picture of Lemuria versus Atlantis, about what sort of mission, for lack of a better term, individuals coming from those different places are here to do?
A lot of clients come that are from, especially Lemuria, and they're supposed to according to many of my clients, supposed to rejoin with those people again, to create that beautiful community again, with sharing, and create these communities where they grow their own food, where they eat a more plant-based diet and go the organic route. And they're all here, and they want to find one another again, to do this again, and to be more like they used to be, is what I've been hearing in sessions.
Okay.
Actually, I'd like to add something to that, if you wouldn't mind, real quick. One of the bigger things I saw all along with our sessions was that there is a level of evolvement that we need to hit as a society. That the reason for the seeding of this planet, and the reason for the hybridization of children and people, and the ongoing, is that we may hit an evolutionary point that takes us to something that is so far beyond what we are and what we're capable of understanding right now. Right. We were aiming for that to happen during the time of Lemuria and Atlantis. That was when it was supposed to originally happen. We kind of messed it up. And we've been working for a very long time right now to get things back to where they once were, so we can achieve that evolutionary jump, that we can go forward and to become these new beings that could possibly live together in a place where we're not trying to kill each other all the time, and we can actually live the full fruition of what our higher selves want us to be and who we truly are. And that's just something that's strong across to me.
Do you think that the Lemurians made any sort of a mistake in allowing, not that they really allowed, but according to what you guys have written about, was there was something that could have been done differently to prevent that destruction?
I'm sure there could have been things that could have been done differently to delay the destruction, but I think inevitably it was what was going to happen. There was something there that needed to be destroyed in order for something new to come forth. So I'm not sure about alternate timelines or alternate parallel realities where it could have been better or not, but the ultimate thing I've felt through it all is that really was what was supposed to happen, and that was what I signed up for in that lifetime.
And so last question is that in the book there was a reference to Lemuria's location being where Hawaii is now.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I actually I've never been to Hawaii. I'd never been to the Pacific ever in my life. But after I wrote the book, I ended up finding myself entangled in a series of situations that have let my entire family move to Hawaii. And we're here now. And I've just moved here about 6-7 weeks ago. And it's very interesting going around. You know, obviously, like the McDonald's and the Target are not here from Lemuria, but there are some things that knock me off my feet when I say it.
Which island do you resonate the most with?
I'm on the Big Island, so it's the only one I've seen so far, but going up the slopes to the volcano have been very, very insightful for me. I feel that was a rite of passage for some of the Lemurian.
Let's let our speakers get started again here and save any continuing questions for later. So Jen, if you'd like to go ahead and start sharing again and make sure that your video stays on.
You got it. Let's see if it'll let me. All right. Is the video on or no? Let's go here. Turn it back on. You should be good now, correct? Are you able to see? Anybody?
I'm looking.
I can't read the whole thing, but it's basically what we were talking about already. One thing to note was that we uncovered that the Lemurian civilization was a matriarch lineage with powers through the female side, which was really fascinating. In the beginning, it seemed like the females were the leaders because they had this knowledge passed through the subconscious. It started with basically what foods would kill you and what foods would heal you. And they were so powerful in their knowledge because they could keep their society alive. We also went through the big wave, the great wave that destroyed Amman. And then we went into Jen being a prisoner for 60 years.
Yeah,
I've had so many clients come remembering the wave. It's very traumatic for many people, and many people are still afraid of swimming in the ocean because of this, and they're here to release this trauma in this lifetime. Many of them have said.
Very much so. The Great Wave was something that was very interesting for me. I had often throughout my life, I have had this recurring dream ever since I was a small child of standing in front of this white cliff and turning around and seeing this massive wave about to like crush me and tower over me. And that was something that really began to make sense for me through my QHHT sessions with Sarah, was this reoccurring dream of a wave.
So our third past life was Christy, who was around in the 70s in New York City. She was abused and neglected in her early life, and she had memories as a child of being a generational abductee, but it's silenced. And then as a young adult, she attempts and fails to bring back the memory of Atlantis and Amman because society was not ready. She was sent to a mental institution and was lobotomized for her beliefs, and she ended that lifetime abruptly. And I thought it was really fascinating that when she ended that lifetime, it was almost as if she realized that she had to repeat this whole thing. And now Jen is back to do that because we just can't escape what we really want for our lives. And I think that's also interesting about the people that died in these civilizations, that what you want is so important to get, or you repeat over and over again different lifetimes to get those things. So what you want is also seeking you, basically. In this current life, through QHHT, we uncovered repressed memories of Jen being abducted as a child, which fit every other client's abduction memories. There was a lot of information on the New Earth hybridization program, the hidden pregnancies amongst women of all ages. So I have to just give an example. I was having a lot of women that were in their 60s about that felt very pregnant, and they were coming for a session because they had gone to many doctors and the doctors couldn't find anything. And they said, well, you must just be experiencing some weird stomach issue. You know, if we could put you on some medication because you feel so pregnant. And in their sessions, they uncovered that they were pregnant with hybrid beings. And digging a little deeper, we uncovered that these women in their 60s were experiencing these pregnancies because they used to use teenage women and it was too hard to hide. So they switched to women around that age because it was easier to hide, and they would think it was just some kind of issue they were having, bloating or, crankiness. They could hide this so much better. And I asked, why are all these, why is this happening? And what they said was they needed to keep seeding the new Earth. And the reason why they needed to seed the new Earth is because there always has to be a backup planet. I've had so many sessions where people lose their planet. They remember losing their planet and there was no planet to go to. Sometimes they would have to stay on a ship for so many years. So there always has to be another Earth. And that is one of the biggest reasons why they're seeding this new Earth. There is a new wave of star seeds currently being born to help reset Earth. And many have resurfacing the memory of the loss of Amun and Atlantis. So many of us we're not alone in our memories of those time periods. We're all here, like I said, to finally release this trauma.
Very good. I think someone asked earlier about some of the issues with childhood abductions. I think we were talking about it a little bit before. And I thought one of the most interesting things that really came out of this all to me was that I had memories as a child of these bright lights coming through the windows of my grandmother's house. And then these bright lights kind of picking me up and bringing me down my steps in my home. And I had always pushed them off as just, whatever, too scary. I don't even want to think about it. But what we uncovered as far as the hypnosis aspect of it was that I was being taken as a child. And I think that led to such a fear of aliens and UFOs as I grew up, because there was a big misunderstanding through it. And once I began to understand the purpose of these abductions that I felt that I was experiencing, I was much less afraid. I really understood it more as something that I had agreed to be a part of. And once I really wrapped that around my head and really dove into it, I realized I was as much the abductee as I was the abductor, because I was part of this system that is here to kind of revamp, rejuvenate, reset, whatever it is, it's what we need to do at this point.
And there are so many beings that are here from other planets that have not had a human lifetime before. Other clients have similar memories. They have memories of the seeding. They remember the jumpsuits, badges, and symbols, which is great validation. They remember the Great Wave of Amun and the Atlantis Civilization Society and the animal people. It was difficult for me to digest the information about the vaccine and the animal people until I had other clients recount the same stories and the same memories. When I went to go help Dolores Cannon's daughter teach in Miami, a really amazing thing happened to me. As part of the experience, they regress me so people can, or they regress somebody, but they chose me to practice. They can practice. And when they regressed me, I recalled that lifetime as a judge. And what was so fascinating was that people were able to heal in that room just by hearing this information. And that is one of the biggest reasons why I wrote this book, and why I'm passionate about sharing this information, because it doesn't take very much for a person to heal. There was somebody in the class whose son actually healed his cough, and he had never heard this story. So just the fact that this information is out now is helping a lot of people. There are so many people starting to share this information. There's this new show on Netflix called Sweet Tooth, and it's about hybrid children that have side effects of a vaccine because there was a virus. So this information is coming out, and it's amazing how it doesn't take much for a person to heal on so many levels just by hearing this information or reading these stories. I know this for a fact because it happened to me. I was regressing Jen one time, just we were going into a different past life that we've had together, where she was my sister and my left shoulder was dislocated. Was not the one doing the regret. I was not the one being hypnotized. I was just listening to her and I didn't think anything of it. But my left shoulder had always been an issue for me. And it wasn't until the next day that I realized that it had healed. So I realized that was so simple. So if I could heal myself in that way, I know that people can read these books and heal themselves instantly.
Truly. I receive messages every day from people who've read my book who literally recount the same thing to me. They tell me they've had the same dreams that I've had my entire life, that they have experiences of remembering the animal people, that they remember so many of these things that we talk about in our books. And finally, they don't feel crazy. Finally, they feel that someone has really pinpointed something that needs further examination. So I know at first, I think we felt kind of alone in a lot of this, or at least I felt a bit alone in understanding this. But the further we've gone with this information, the more people are coming to us saying the same exact thing.
Who were you in your past life?
I think we noticed a bit of with a couple of different people that were already involved with the book, the other people who were mentioned in Sarah's book, and then also people who have come to us. There seems to be a pattern of things for people who were reborn again from Atlantis or reborn again from Lemuria. I don't know if any of these things kind of resonate with anyone, but I'm sure Sarah can talk a little bit more about it.
Well, sure. Well, I'm just really curious if you guys in the audience have any memories or if any of this resonates with you.
Forgot to unmute myself. Do you want to go ahead and break for more Q&A or input about their memories right now?
Yes, I would love that.
Okay, so I will shift, turn off, Jen, your presentation. And okay, so I'm looking for hands again here. If somebody's got any comment they want to make. Okay, I'm seeing Angie. Go ahead and unmute.
So yeah, I remember when I awakened, had the awakening of consciousness, I started seeing a lot of past lives, lots and lots and lots. And I distinctly remember the end of Lemuria, which was a war between Atlantis and Lemuria. And the Atlanteans brought down, they had spaceships, actually, who would have thought? And they lassoed an asteroid and brought it down on Mu, which was sitting on top of a bunch of natural gas pockets, and it blew up. And I remember a lot of how we lived in Lemuria. Not so much in Atlantis. Atlantis became very left brain, very patriarchal, very scientific. Amazing toys were built in those days. But yeah, and you know, and it's interesting because in the beginning it was such a watershed of information, right? The idea that there was a cat people planet and that the cat people originally immigrated with those who would become the Lemurians to this planet. You know, that there was life out there in the universe. It was so shocking. You know, now it's, I don't know, it's so comfortable. It's interesting how our brains actually learn how to rewire with new information, especially when it's firsthand and we learn it for ourselves.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
there's so much to learn from like going back and looking at all of that. It really is.
That's fascinating.
Okay, would you like to then Jewel or Julie, go ahead and make your comment?
Hi, I was fortunate enough to just have a session with Sarah in the Keys, and so much of this is very similar to my life story. I remember being called to go to Hawaii when I was a freshman in college to do a summer school there, and it felt like I had been there my whole life. I also, Jen, you mentioned being drawn to the Big Island. The Big Island was a very big draw to me, and I actually, Kona specifically, stood out, and I just remember being there, and it felt really familiar to me. But there's so many similarities. I've had so many downloads and connections with both of your stories and what you've said, and it's just fascinating. So thank you so very much. I really am enjoying getting to know all of this.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Earl, would you like to unmute?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I first heard stories of people having past lives in Atlantis back in the 1970s. But it was also during that period that I read some of Velikovsky's works. That one book was entitled Worlds in Collision, his first book in 1950. And then Earth in Upheaval. And he reconstructed a lot of ancient history and mythology and concluded that our solar system used to be quite different than it is today. And his successors have a basically scientific orientation. And the picture they paint is that Saturn used to be the center of our solar system, and our present sun was not in the picture yet. And Mars was part of this picture with Saturn at the center, and maybe Venus. And that configuration involved us being much closer to Saturn than we are today, and Mars. And a lot of ancient pictographs, rock art, actually depict different phases of this, and it fits a lot of plasma physics.
Earl, do you have a question in here or something of personal experience?
Not a personal experience, but all of this fits into that, and the catastrophic explanation would be somewhat reflected by Plato, that Atlantis suddenly disappeared beneath the sea because of these violent upheavals. Mountains rose, other places sank, and the earth actually turned upside down. And I just wonder if anyone in the audience has read any of this material, because I think it provides a scientific background for all this that would help explain a lot of these memories and the similarities of many of them.
Earl, I've read this material, and Venus came by from another place to take its new position in the cosmos here, or in our own solar system. But Sarah, can you or Jen respond to Earl about any corroboration of that story, which is not accepted generally, but it is very provocative?
I've never read that story. I don't know if you have, Jen.
But I do know that we've started working on another set of books that kind of go into something very similar to what you're bringing up, Earl. So the subject matter is a bit new for us to look at planets that may or may not be there anymore, or rearrangement, but it's something we're really looking at right now in our current sessions.
Okay,
and I would love to give you more, but it takes a little bit of time for us. We can't always get what we want in our sessions right away. We've tried that. They tend to just give us what we need in drips and drabs and tell us to kind of put it together. So definitely stay tuned for a really good explanation for that at some point in the future.
Okay, I would invite you to, there's a website called The Electric Universe.
Universe?
Electric Universe. And Velikovsky was actually a psychiatrist, a medical doctor, a scientist. He had a very diverse background. And I think that reading helps, at least may provide a big picture explanation for all of these memories and kind of the history. So I strongly recommend looking into it.
Definitely.
Earl, can you feel free to go ahead and bring this up again at the end of our Q&A? I think it's time now to let Gary speak or make a comment, and then we'll move on to our presentation again. Gary,
Yeah,
if you want to unmute.
Yeah, I just had a question. I was wondering if, Jen, if you are aware of or read a book called The Lemarian Scrolls.
No, I've never.
It's by Satguru. I can't even pronounce his name. You'll have to Google it. But he founded the Hindu temple in Kauai in Hawaii. And he just kind of wandered into the jungle and put a post down and said, this is where we're going to build the temple. And he channeled this book called the Lemarian Scrolls. And I'm just curious, what information in there might jive with, the information you're getting. So
I would love to read it and find out.
Yeah,
That is
Guru
really
gave us the short name for him, but his long name, I can't even begin to pronounce it. So the Lemarian Scrolls, you should check that out, I think.
What's really different about the two of us is that neither one of us have really read or studied anything else than what we got in these sessions. And my book is only just regressions. I never looked up anything or researched anything just to keep it very valid. And the same with Jen. But this is fascinating. I'm going to look up both of these things now that our books are already published.
I find it interesting, though, now that I really didn't know as much going into it, but the people that I am meeting, they are giving me new clues and new things to look at that are actually furthering our explanation. They're filling in some of the blanks that I think I just need to meet these people and have these connections in order for these new things to come about. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, he passed away about 15 years ago, but his information's there, so.
It's just so amazing. It's amazing that these things validate one another. I think it's so exciting. I'm excited to read these two books.
And the subtitle is Angelic Prophecies Revealing Human Origins.
Oh, wow.
Subtitle of the book.
That's perfect.
That's great.
I am seeing somebody on the screen right now I know knows a great deal about all this, but never talks about it. I invite you to say something, otherwise we're going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so let's go ahead and Jen, start sharing your screen again and pick up where you left off. Thank you.
You got it. And should be sharing now. Let me just make sure my camera's going. Start video. All right, guys. Alrighty, so we did some questions. So this is kind of, I think, where we've gone full circle with the information that we received. I think, Sarah, if you want to talk a little bit more about it, we can go back and forth a little bit and understand a bit more.
Sure. So what does it say about where we are in our current world, the connections? And we receive this information so close to a point of declassification. Is this a coincidence? I'm really curious as to what your thoughts are on this.
I have definitely tried to find more of a meaning to all of this in so many ways as to how one of the things I think we found through the Dolores Cannon method was that she would always say that this life is the most important life and not to get too caught up in your past lives, to really focus on this one and see the connections in the world around you and what it's trying to tell you. And when I look around us, I see Atlantis rising and falling again. I see Lemuria being destroyed again. I see this discord happening in our society and people waking up to things that have really been pulled over our eyes for a very long period of time. I see people finally coming to terms with who they really are and being being joyful in the expression of that and not harboring anxiety as a result of it. So I think it's no coincidence that we are where we are and are receiving the information we are getting, as well as why all of these things are happening in the world around us right now. Like we're not living in Candyland anymore. This is some serious stuff going on. And I think if we fail to learn from it again, I don't know how many chances we get. Maybe it's infinite, maybe it's not, but I know we're at a very specific point for declassification too with UFOs. I see it all over the place, different governments releasing different documents showing that there have been way more cover-ups than we're willing to accept or realize. And I don't find it coincidental. I think we're hitting that evolutionary point that we missed out on so long ago again.
I think it's really such a great time for everybody to really just question who we really are and to really focus on what we really want for our life and what we're really a part of, and to really get to know ourselves on a deeper level. And I think I know, because I've asked so many higher selves, how are we doing? That I'm always told that we are doing so much better than ever before, that we are evolving. It may not look like it, but it's always been positive when I've talked to higher selves. But here's a question: are we not for full circle here? Contact. Oh, I missed the rest of it, but it was from Brian. I don't know if you want to unmute him, but he had a question.
What he said was, are we not full circle here? Open contact would include the hybrid children first seeded in Lemuria.
Oh, I see. Exactly. We are pretty much full circle. So many of us are back here again to connect with one another again, to release this information, to go further with it.
It's just time for the next level to happen. We're ready for it. And I think most of us are kind of sick of having this illusion of a life where we all pretend to, you know, keep up with the Joneses and have to have these things and let other people think a certain way about us in order to maintain something. I think most of us have realized over the last year that a lot of that isn't very important, and it's holding us back from our true potential. And it would be amazing to see what we really could achieve if we allowed ourselves to evolve past this kind of destruction that we live within.
How close are you two to the end?
I think right here.
Okay, a reason I'm asking is that we want to preserve about 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. So no.
You got it. I'm going to turn this over to Sarah so that way you can find out if you're interested in finding out more information from Sarah. This is her
So this is my website. You can go to theholistichuhypnotist.com. I have a little YouTube channel that's got a lot of really fascinating information on it. But if you're interested in taking a QHHT class, you can get a discount and save 10% if you type in trust, because it's such a fun time to take that class and to use that method to uncover whatever it is you want to, or even to help, your family members or other people. And and you can buy my book on Amazon. It's going to be out on Audible pretty soon.
Very nice. And we also have a Facebook page, a Facebook group right now that is just growing in numbers. We have almost 500 people in it who have read the books and are finding that they're recounting similar experiences from their lives as well, that all kind of feed into the same thing. So if you're also interested in taking this a step further and joining us on this Facebook group and sharing these experiences or finding other people who resonate with it, I think that's a really good place to start, just by typing in the name of Sarah's book or my book into Facebook. It should bring you right there. Or you can find us at Sarah Breskman Cosme. All right. And then for me, I try to keep it very simple. I am just working on my website these days. There's a lot of more information that I've put on there as far as blog posts. I like to try and write about anything that comes up that I think is relatable or interesting that goes into this kind of subject matter. I've also created a past lives forum on there for people to also feel free to share their information, share what they've uncovered in their regressions, and kind of find a bit of a community for it. We also, let me see, I think we already talked about the Facebook group, so that's kind of where we're at. This is just a growing thing for us. We are finding that more and more people are relating to everything as we go forward with stuff. And I hope you find the same thing for yourselves.
Okay. You can turn off your presentation now for the night.
You got it.
And I will go to gallery view. And I'm going to take the opportunity to start off with a question I've written down here. And that is, were the red crystals in your account the same as the Tuawi stone or the firestone or the terrible crystal spoken of in the Casey readings? Understanding you don't know much about Casey, he spoke about those three names. And in there, it was described as a six-sided form in which the light appeared as the means of communication between the infinite and the finite. In the early days, it was used to communicate with the spiritual realm. And that sounds like what you were saying in your book, where they talked with their home planet. But in the later days, that same crystal was used as a source of power over other people. So can you maybe comment or respond to what I just read from Casey?
I mean, it really sounds like it. It sounds like it could be the same crystal that he's talking about. I haven't read Casey's work, but I've also had other clients recount going on different planets and finding a red crystal, even just a couple days ago, where they were on a planet and this red crystal was what they used to communicate with their origins, you know, the people of their origins, and using it for different things. They were also able to like levitate objects with this crystal. So it kind of makes sense. It's so neat that you're bringing that up.
Definitely. It sounds like it. It really does. I remember in our sessions, one of the clearest things they showed me was a very multifaceted red stone that was a dull, almost like a dull blood red. It wasn't a very shiny crystal or prismatic in many ways, but it also came across very strongly in our sessions that it had caused a lot of problems on the home planet of where we had come from and where we were basically seeding from, that it was something we needed, but we were trying to get away from in some ways just because we depleted it or misused it already, and we were trying to learn from that.
I'm going to offer that I've got a little awareness of some of these crystals, and that they are the so-called Atlantean crystals are not beautiful gemstone crystals, but a compression of crystal and material that is dark red. And that one of the reasons that 3 major religions and 4 billion people are fighting over Jerusalem is because some of them reside deep underneath the Temple of the Rock. Now that's, I can't validate that for you, but I'll just say that and let you respond or not. And then I'll go into another comment here.
That just makes so much sense. I mean, I think the power of it is so intense that humans can't handle it. I don't think there's a human around that can handle the power of the red crystals.
Having worked in the Middle East as a journalist for a while, I think that's actually the best explanation for why anyone would want to fight there, because when it all came down to it, nobody really could remember specifically why anybody was fighting. It was a war that they fought cousin against cousin, and that's still to this day what they look at it as. So perhaps that is the reason, and we've just forgotten why we were fighting.
By the way, I will add that those that are trying to get control of that area don't remember or know about that crystal in the report that I know about, and that Jerusalem at one time long ago was called Ra-Lusalem, R-A, City of Light, and that has changed somewhat. So, but that's all conjecture. Let's go ahead and stay on the topic, and I will ask Ross to go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paul. So, Sarah, a couple questions and actually comments from what you just said. So you have mentioned a fear of losing a planet. End of quote. So yes, we have lost planet once upon a time, long time ago. It was a planet Maldek. So do you know of this case that we lost it, and And because people are coming back, like, for, you know, with the memories of, as you said, you know, Lemuria and Atlantis, with the memories that we have, that there was once upon a planet and they were there. And so do you see any correlation? Do you have any memories or any recollections of that?
I have had many clients recall losing a planet, but I often don't know which planet they're talking about. A lot of times I'll ask their higher selves, and their higher selves will say, this vessel doesn't have the name of this planet. But I know that there are many that are back here again that are from a planet that was destroyed. And they finally found a way to incarnate in this one. There's so many of us from so many different planets.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's well, thank you. Yes, because, you know, yes, we have lost planet, and was the Maldek, and, you know, Law of One is talking about it, and I think so. There's this guy written, I think so, George King, he have written about it, and so anyway, so that's that. Now, also, you have tried, you know, said that you are trying not to make any waves.
Oh yeah.
So Sarah, so we live in, you know, we live in this very, I guess so, you may say, polarizing, unraveling, you know, everything unravels. It's remembering who we are, I think so.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, you know, I'm sorry to say that we have to get uncomfortable. We have to learn this stuff. We have to get our, you know, this stuff out, and we have to make ways. We have to. Otherwise, we're never going to learn. We're never going to remember. We're never going to know anything. And we're going to still repeat the same damn lessons over and over again.
True.
So yeah, I'm being sick and tired of this BS that is happening. And we have to get our, we have
I
to
guess
make
I
ways.
have a fear of the government.
What's more important, your destiny or the stupid government?
Well, even just a couple of days ago, I was sharing on somebody's YouTube channel. They were interviewing me, and it was taken down within maybe an hour.
Get another channel. That's it. Get another channel. Get uncomfortable. Get another channel. Go another channel. Choose something different. We have to get this information out. Because
a lot of people don't want their world to be upside down. A lot of people want to pretend.
I'm sorry.
Just a
I'm
human.
sorry. Oh, geez.
You know, this right here is reminding me of Laugh-In, the old show where we have windows, you know, and Paul Lynde is on one side and Ross is over here on the other side, and you're looking at each other, and Ross is saying, "I'm so sorry." And about that time, Sarah, you looked at that direction. Anyway, kind of a funny anecdote here. I'd like to open the door here.
Thank you.
To the and you can ask another question in a minute here, since we're into our Q&A now. We've got about 20 minutes. Some of our board members are pretty quiet tonight, so I want to offer Julia or Paula or Marianne an opportunity, or invite you to ask a question. After you do all this work to bring these speakers in, you ought to get your 2 cents in. Anybody?
Well, I could say something.
Yeah, I knew you might.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening. I think that's the best thing to do, because what you're doing is getting expert witness testimony, and I'm a journalist, as you know, too. And the witness testimony is probably the most valid, because they don't have anything to gain. I mean, what do they have to gain except knowledge of themselves? They don't. What are they going to be? Movie stars? I'm going to ask you, first of all, what do you think the government would think is dangerous about anything you said? I've been in this area for, over 40 years, and nothing that you said is a matter of national security. What, if you had to guess why they shut you down, what would you guess?
I don't know. I think, well, from my video the other day, I was talking about some abduction stories.
I know, but not, first of all, as a journalist in this area, I don't like the word abduction. Contact is a much better.
Right, contact.
And is a much more thoughtful a word. Because an abduction is something where they take a woman, they rape her, they slit her throat and throw her in the garbage can, and she doesn't get back to her bed.
I mentioned the word vaccine.
Okay, so can we agree that we take away this? Because as you know, I run a conference, I refuse the word abduction. Because if you
Encounter.
say, yeah, well, no, contact with something. You don't know, sometimes you see what it's contact with, sometimes you don't. But it's all contact. And you even said these people agreed before they were born. But abduction has a very negative connotation. So, because they're put back. I mean, they're walking around otherwise to tell the story. Otherwise, that's contact. I mean, an abduction is you ask ransom for the person, or you don't bring them back, like, Getty. When they
we should get rid of that word. It shouldn't even be used.
But I want help with that, you guys. I want help with you getting rid of the word. It's contact in whatever form it manifests, whatever form. Okay, so the vaccine. So you went to the vaccine. That's what you think it is.
I think that's what it was, possibly, that got my video taken down. But it's not. I think that it's just these memories of being at Atlantis during that time where I just didn't want to make waves back then, and it kind of, everything going on right now triggers that a little bit. Yeah, I want to share everything I can to help people as much as I can, but there's some things that I probably wouldn't share.
Yeah, so you think that was the trigger?
What?
You think that was the trigger? The vaccine?
For what? Oh, for Atlantis being destroyed?
I can't imagine them taking down your YouTube channel.
No, they didn't take down my YouTube channel. I was on somebody's YouTube channel, and they took down the video. Because I think I mentioned the vaccine in Atlantis too many times.
Okay.
All right. Brian had a question that he wrote in the chat. Do you want to come online, Brian, and state your question out loud? Not hearing anything. Whenever I have a question, then I don't see any hands right this instant. Whenever I read something that is pretty provocative, I'm always looking at where does it corroborate other accounts, or where does it differ from other accounts? And I have to say, one of the parts of the book that I really reacted to was when it came through these wisdom source, the dinosaurs were the source of Earth's oil. Did I read that right? And is that true? And I would say nobody believes that anymore. Could that be an old memory of what we were taught at one time that came through as you're in your state of awareness? And how do you sort out memories coming through versus truth coming through? Or is it true?
I'm not really sure where it says they were the source of oil.
Maybe it was Jen's book. I'm not sure. I read it somewhere, and so that's my question. Even if that is not what I read incorrectly, is there any? How do you know when you're reading getting a QHHT session when you were speaking versus something that you're remembering? Any techniques that you try to validate your own answers?
Well, I know for me that it's possible for a person to have a false memory, but I can often check that out because people can't recount the same exact story more than once if they're lying completely. And so I would check Jen's story out just to check to see if it was a false memory. And she could recount the same exact story down to the specifics, which I felt validated the fact that it wasn't indeed a false memory.
With regard to Casey, when you looked at his readings, I've got all 14,000 right here, and you go search and you find exactly the same account 25 years later. that couldn't happen unless they were either seeing the same information or, it's internally consistent. I don't know if you have
That's
enough.
important. It's really important because if you make up a story, it's always different. What were you going to say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean, I just found the technique that kind of helped differentiate that too when we were beginning and as we went through and wrote the books. I would take the sessions of our recorded sessions and I would actually listen to them over and over and over again. Each time I would listen to them, I would find out new information. It would take that deeper and deeper and deeper. So for instance, sometimes they would show me or download this image of something that was relatable in my life right now, and try to draw out that memory using it. Or they would tell, like I would get one idea or one memory and there was way more to it. It had to expand upon it. So a lot of just writing while I was listening to the recordings and just blind writing through it all actually unfolds so much more. And it could take that little nugget that you're not sure is actually your memory or not and really understand why they're showing it to you. If that helps.
Hey, I see Cynthia's hand up. Go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Can you just speak, I read in your book about the Rh negative blood, and can you speak a little bit more about that, please?
Do you want Sarah or myself?
Either.
Well, the Rh negative blood, it was essentially the gift of the stars, the gift from the stars. I believe the Rh was a result of the divine union from the commander that was able to impregnate the that first one of those early humans and develop that first child would carry the Rh negative factor, which had many abilities and I'm sure still does.
Yes, like I myself am blood, and I know just from what I've experienced through like medical procedures and whatnot that it's a very tricky thing to have. But for others who I find who have the Rh negative blood, we share very similar features. We also share very similar experiences in life, and we also share similar dreams and things like that. I find there's no coincidence that we are sharing those things and all share the same rare blood type.
Yeah. So if humans now have originated from the initial Pleiadian that in which the Rh negative blood was passed down, then what does that say about all the other blood types?
I think they're from other planets that came here to seed. Each blood type is probably from a different planet. And I was curious if you always stay with the same blood type, but apparently you don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you.
I've got a question about incarnations. If you carry certain genetic traits over and over and over, and so if you have a problem long ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and you still have that issue inside, you're carrying it in your energy field, how does that carry through to different genetic strains when you come through a soul in Africa in one life and then in northern Finland in the next life?
Well, if you have any sort of issue, it's always because there's something you need to learn from that issue. So it's always a message. It's always something that you need. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but if you haven't learned that lesson, you'll carry it through to the next life if it's something you need to learn. So if you have an issue with your shoulder and you never learned the lesson, you may carry that.
Yeah, I think the question for me is this, that wouldn't be carried in DNA if you're going to totally different, types of bodies. And I'm wondering then, is that an indication that that issue that you are expressing in another lifetime is carried in your Akashic records or in your energy field as opposed to your DNA?
Oh, okay. So it would also be in your DNA because you are this bigger part of you as well. So it would be in your DNA. You are God, essentially. your body is this part of source as well. So it would be communicated through the DNA, I would think.
Yeah, we're only beginning to understand what our DNA is truly capable of and what we're able to manipulate and use it for, and the changes that have happened over time to it as well. So I think one of the things that came across very strongly in our sessions was that there's an ancestral karma associated with our DNA for those of us who have contracts to it. That if you've started something in a life and you want to finish it in another life, it does carry over in some form of your DNA, that it is there in some way. It may be hidden in some inner like parts of the helix, but it's there. There is a connection there. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's very clear in our sessions that there is a massive connection between those two things.
Not seeing any hands yet. I'll ask one more, and that is that it's interesting to me. Oh, hand came up. Okay, I'll finish this. I'll say that in your book, you talk about like Adam or Evie. Sounds a lot like Adam and Eve. And then I get to thinking, if the floods and the conflagration that appeared all around the world, let's say at least with Noah's flood, I think there's like over 180 different folk stories about a massive worldwide flood. I'm asking what you uncovered with what sounds like Adam and Eve. Were other civilizations, Mayan civilizations, Chinese civilizations, potentially also having what they called as the father and mother of humanity, not knowing they were simply one of 100 groups of survivors? And maybe you haven't studied that, but is anything come through, Sarah, anyway, in the readings that show a common theme like that?
With a flood? Is that what you mean exactly?
Yeah, when we were talking
or
about
the beginning of Adam and Eve.
No, I'm saying that when you talked about the Great Wave, the destruction of Atlantis, it recalls the Great Flood as well. And I'm not sure if they're one and the same, but there are stories in the folk histories all around the world about a flood and the starting up again of humanity. And that's my question, is that you write about an Adam and an Eve. Is it possible that that is a common theme in all of these resurgences of humanity in different locations? On Mount Ararat maybe is one, and another one, you know, in Antarctica or wherever it would be, that didn't know about each other when they first got restarted. Do you understand that question?
Definitely. I'm sure it is. I'm positive it is. What do you think, Jen?
I think religion has been used against us in many ways as we've evolved as a society. And I think the reason it was coming across so strongly in our sessions was that it's time for us to kind of think outside of religion, to begin thinking for ourselves again, to look beyond the guidance that those books have provided and realize that they have been misinterpreted over the years in many ways. And that when you look at it, there could be so many more logical explanations for what we're seeing in these books rather than what we're being told is in them. You know, kind of glossing it over, making it easier for children to read and learn from, but we actually have forgotten the true story.
I saw Dom's hand up for a minute. He took it down. I'm not letting you off. What is it you were going to comment or say? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I was just going to address what you had mentioned a little bit earlier about dinosaurs and oil. I think you may just have been referring to that when an asteroid was formed and smashed into the planet about 66 million years ago, caused the death of about 96% almost of plant and animal species here. And that large amount of biomass eventually was buried and compacted and formed oil.
Do you independently know that, Dom, or is this the story that we've heard?
I can't remember how I know it.
Yeah, I got that problem too.
Yeah, so the reptilians tend to be fairly forceful and aggressive, and we're partially responsible for that because they were slated to become the sovereign race on this planet in our solar system. And others had the idea, well, let's have human being do it instead of reptilians. So, like I said, a large meteor was formed, like a synthetic meteor was formed and crashed into the planet to precipitate an extinction level event for the reptilians. And even though human beings were protozoa back 66 million years ago, it was done on our behalf, and the reptilian practitioners remember that. Human being has the subtle racist attitude toward reptilians. We call cold-blooded, like without conscience, and without remorse in general in our language. We refer to the amygdala at the base of our brain as the reptilian, base, survival, mechanism. Even though many of the ancient races worshipped reptiles, snakes and like that, we think snakes are like slimy. You know what I mean? So we have like an attitude of subtle racism against them, and believe me, they carry that against us. So, so my comment was, it's an awful long time to hold a grudge. So it's been woven into our culture, and it's part of our brand now. We were, our sovereignty was usurped from us, and now we're not going to take anything from anybody. So part of the task that human being has been tasked is that within the next 600 years, we're going to solve that problem. We're going to have the distinctions of knowledge and wisdom and transformation exported effectively to the reptilian culture and transform that culture.
That's what I've been hearing too. And I've been hearing that reptilians purposely cut off their feathers. They used to have feathers. They used to be a different, like bird-like being, and almost like we do to ourselves. So we are so similar to reptilians. I mean, many people have memories of being a reptilian, and many people are having a reptilian life right now, but they have shut themselves off from who they really are, so many of them. And that if we can regain this, we can help them to regain who we really are. That's what I've been hearing in sessions.
Yeah. And
okay, I'm going to take one last question, one hand up, and then I'm going to give you two a last final word, and then we're going to close it up for the night. So Ross, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute, you can make a comment.
Yeah, thank you. So my actually comment is in response to Dom. So Dom, I have heard kind of similar what you just have shared, that this meteorite that struck 66 million years ago, it was done on purpose to take out the reptilian lineage of our planet. So they basically do not evolve and move forward as an evolutionary species. So I don't know what to believe really, but it's a little bit coincidental that this meteorite kind of just wiped stuff out, and one species went out and another species
this here, Ross, I think, and Dom, it's interesting, but we're talking between ourselves, not involving our speakers. So
I know. So
let me move to Julia, last question, and then we're going to close up.
Okay, I just remembered and figured out how to raise my hand. That when I used to go to a channeling group and they was an angelic channeling, and they talked a lot about Atlantis, and we could ask them questions. And so what they had told us over many times in questions was that this time that we're in now, they called it the time of the Atlantean correction. And all the we were in Atlantis and we were making choices in Atlantis, often toward technology and away from the human love aspect of our natures. And that this time when we're all here, we've all gathered again to choose to follow the path of love in the heart. And the technology is secondary to that we find this openness and this miraculous healing, like Jen's talking about, that comes not from the technology, but from the understanding and the opening of the understanding. And our bodies just give us feedback that way, and we can move forward and join together. So I love that phrase, the Atlantean correction. We're living in the time of the Atlantean correction. Okay, that's all I want to say.
I love
Thank
that.
you so much. The link is going to die in 2 minutes. So unless Jen or Sarah have got one final short comment, I'm going to close.
I just really want to say quickly, thank you so much for inviting me. And this has been so confirming all this information. And wow, Dom and Ross, you guys are full of information, and you too, Paul, and everybody out there. I've learned so much from you guys. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and it's wonderful to share.
Thank you, Sarah and Jen.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having us both on
Okay.
here.
Okay, so I want to make an announcement here. Well, first of all, Sarah and Jen, that was a remarkable exchange. You're clearly the perfect tag team to present such interesting findings. So thank you for sharing that story with us. That's BoulderExo's offering for July 2021. You may not immediately accept everything you've heard, but ideas have been planted. In our world of intentional misinformation, it is always prudent to validate everything you consider as potentially true. Your subconscious mind may be more active than you think, for if we have the wisdom to frame the questions, then the answers likely already reside within us. I think the following quote from Sarah's website sums it up nicely. I have always been passionate about helping others develop tools that allow them to overcome their difficulties. We are all connected, and by helping one person, we help all people. In another quote, she says, the purpose was to show how people are treated differently by society, and that a society will turn on themselves when they exclude those who are different, rather than be inclusive of differences. We are seeing that in our society now. This is why this book needs to be written. So if you want to delve deeper, you can find Sarah and Jen's books on Amazon. And I guess she's already said that. She was interviewed on May 18th by Regina Meredith by Gaia TV. So you can look for that in the fall. Our next presentation will be August 20th, where we will feature Damien John Knott. Mark your calendars now for August 20th and look to future emails for further details. You can always go to BoulderExo.com to find your own answers or review recent presentations. So in closing, I want to thank board member Paula Harris for bringing Sarah to our awareness. Thanks to the rest of the board who meet monthly to produce this series. And thank you, Marianne, for responding to the outdated link so that 44 could eventually join our session, of which 39 stayed to the very end. So on behalf of the BoulderExo board, Cynthia, Julia, Marianne, Paula, Ross, and myself, thank you to our invited guests and esteemed audience. From Longmont, Colorado, we wish you good night.
Yay.